the Cabinet of Curiosities would like to welcome you. There are 30 facts that redefine the presidency of the United States. What makes character and bodies so unique? First, the jukebox of the president. Forget about playlists on Before dawn, John Quincy Adams would begin each day by swimming nude in the Potomac River. This was his daily routine. When in Royal, a courageous journalist once famously sat on his clothing until he consented to grant her an interview. She forced the leader of the free world to conduct diplomatic affairs from a position of deep water. 2. A man of stature and state. The smallest president in history, James Madison, was at 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed little under 100 pounds. Foreign diplomats often misjudged him due to his little size and soft-spoken manner, only to be intellectually shredded by the one who is known as the father of the Constitution. Finally, the Taft scale. When it comes to weight, William Howard Taft was the most powerful president in our history. When he became renowned for becoming caught in the bathtub of the White House, he placed an order for a bespoke model that was large enough to accommodate 4 men of average size. His enormous presence is shown by the mythology that has been passed down. A voice for radio nod is the 4th item. The rich, booming baritone that we believe Abraham Lincoln to have had was not really his voice. A high-pitched carrying tenor was how his contemporaries characterized his voice, and when he was feeling really he would sometimes switch to a harsh falsetto. If he were to deliver the Gettysburg Address in the present day, it could come as a surprise. The sartorial standoff is the 5th item. Despite the fact that they were both very busy, Barack Obama and Michael Bloomberg disclosed that they both used the identical method to combat decision fatigue, which was to wear exclusively blue or gray suits. In Obama's mind, it was about rooting out options that were not important. When it comes to fashion discussions, the brain power of a president is just too valuable. There is also the sheepish lawnmower. Over the course of World War I, President Woodrow Wilson used a great cost-cutting technique by bringing a herd of sheep to graze on the lawn of the White House. Not only did he sell their wool, but he also raised $52,000 for the American Red Cross, the first green endeavor ever undertaken. The presidential racehorse. Number 7. The foul-mouthed parrot that Andrew Jackson had, Poll, caused a disturbance during his burial in the year 18. It was necessary to remove the bird from the ceremony since it was uttering profanities in an uncontrollable manner. This was a very suitable and boisterous goodbye for the feisty Longhorn. 8. An issue that is like a bear. When Theodore Roosevelt, the supreme environmentalist, was on a hunting expedition, he once refused to kill a bear that was tied up and held prisoner because he believed that doing so would be The political cartoon depicting the incident served as the impetus for the designing of the teddy bear, the first pet that is allowed to roam free. Calvin Coolidge and his wife were of the highest order when it came to their affection for animals. A pygmy hippo, which they called Billy, a raccoon named Rebecca, who was supposed to be a dinner companion but ended up becoming a pet that was walked on a leash. 2 lion pups, a wallaby, and a bear were all part of their menagerie at the White House. A threat that is unseen and has 6 legs 12. Herbert Hoover's son had 2 alligators as pets, and they were known to wander about the grounds of the White House on occasion. It was generally agreed upon that they were the most dangerous and unexpected of the inhabitants that lived at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. 11. The Collector-in-Chief. When Grover Cleveland was not serving as president, he worked as a hangman. As the sheriff of Erie County, New York, he personally put 2 offenders to death during his tenure in that position. It was only during his administration that a president carried out an execution. A supporter of the jogging craze among people, Jimmy Carter was a devoted runner long before it became widely popular. On a daily basis, he would go for jogs that covered a distance of 6 miles across the grounds of Camp David, often leaving fatigued Secret Service personnel in his wake. The White House poltergeist. Number 13. President Abraham Lincoln was a man who had a strong faith in the supernatural. It is said that following the passing of his son Willie, he conducted seances in the room known as the Red Room. Within the confines of the presidential mansion, First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln said that she had a conversation with their son, who had passed away via the means of a medium. Great Pandemonium. Number 14. Theodore Roosevelt was a naturalist and writer who produced a great deal of work. As a matter of fact, He was the one who initiated the contemporary sport of judo in the United States. Following a trip to Japan, he established a dojo in the White House and began training on a regular basis. He even received a black eye as a result of his dedication to his training. A man of letters, thousands of them, is the 15th item. Immediately upon his departure from office, Harry S. Truman would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, pour himself a shot of whiskey, and then settle down to write. The sensible Bess, who was his wife, often intercepted the hundreds of searing, hilarious, and brutally honest letters that he had written by hand. This was done in order to avoid any diplomatic difficulties. The influence of the cigarette, labeled as Health 15. At the same time, James Garfield was able to write Greek with one hand and Latin with the other, which was an impressive feat of cerebral agility that was performed in a parlor. In addition, he was believed that a spiritual force had rescued him from an event that occurred while he was a youngster, which fueled his desire. Curse of Tippecanoe. Number 17. During the period between 1840 and 1980, the Tecumseh S. Curse, or the 20-year presidential curse, said that any president who was elected in a year that was divisible by 20 would pass away while in office, beginning with William Henry Harrison in 1840 and continuing through John F. Kennedy in 1960. It remained in place until Ronald Reagan in 1980, who survived an attempt on his life, thereby ending the curse. The President's Guinea Pig. Number 18. The manner in which George Washington passed away was a medical gaffe. After he became unwell, his physicians performed a procedure called bloodletting, which resulted in the removal of around 40% of his blood in a period of less than 12 hours. The cure, and not the sickness itself, seems to have been the cause of death. The White House is the location of the doctor's visit. In his time as an actor, Ronald Reagan was profoundly impacted by the practice of astrology. In the aftermath of the assassination attempt that took place in 1981, his wife Nancy discreetly hired an astrologer from San Francisco to chart the stars and find the most auspicious periods for the president to travel, give speeches, and even undergo more extensive surgical procedures. Keeping a positive attitude is a powerful tool. The perceptions that Franklin D. Roosevelt had were unparalleled. In an effort to conceal the severity of his paralysis caused by polio from the general population, he went to extraordinary measures. The press corps was cooperative and did not take any photographs of him when he was being carried or in his wheelchair. The image management effort was one of the most successful and longest-running initiatives in the history of the United States. 21. Both a thirst for information and a want to punch, known as the Red Fox of Kinderhook. Martin Van Buren was a dapper individual who wore corsets, used cologne, and served fine champagne at the White House. He was also known as the Red Fox. On the other hand, his adversaries were able to effectively utilize this to their advantage, portraying him as an aristocratic elite who was out of touch with the log cabin and hard-cider ordinary guy. The Great Tomato Trial, which is number 22. Over the course of the majority of the 18th and 19th centuries, the tomato was seen as both a harmful and decorative plant. Thomas Jefferson, who was known for being an agricultural pioneer, produced them at Monticello and contributed to the widespread use of them as a meal. He also fearlessly consumed what many people considered to be a wolf peach. The 23rd item on the list is a midnight snack that will last forever. A steak that was cooked to a rare temperature was Ulysses S. Grant's favorite dinner, and he often ate it at midnight. He was also famed for his love of cucumbers that had been steeped in vinegar for breakfast. Additionally, he smoked up to 20 cigars each day, a habit that ultimately contributed to the development of throat cancer, which ultimately led to his death. The revolution in ice cream has begun. Although Dolly Madison did not develop ice cream, she had a significant impact on its popularity. In the year 1813, she presented a superb strawberry ice cream dish for her husband's second inaugural ball, so establishing strawberry ice cream as the ideal American dessert. The anti-broccoli administration is at number 25. During his presidency, George H.W. Bush made news throughout the world when he famously prohibited broccoli from being served aboard Air Force One and at the White House. In a statement, he said, "I do not like broccoli. On top of that, I have owned like it ever since I was a little child and my mother forced me to consume it. In addition, I am the President of the United States, and I have decided that I will not consume any more broccoli. A rallying cry for particular eaters worldwide. In a literal sense, the ghostwriter number 26. Dwight D. Eisenhower, who served as the Supreme Commander of the Allies, was a passionate painter. In order to alleviate the stress of his presidency, he decided to take up painting as a pastime. He produced approximately 250 oil paintings, the most of which were landscapes and portraits of his family and other international leaders. 27. The initial call to the Technical Support Department. Rutherford B. Hayes was the proprietor of the very first telephone, which was put in the White House in the year 1877. Simply put, the phone number was 1. According to reports, he did not have a large number of people to contact since the gadget was still quite uncommon. 28th, a man of conviction who also has a pet rock. In a peculiar performance that he performed in the parlor, James A. Garfield was able to write in Greek with one hand and Latin with the other. The tremendous intellectualism that was prevalent throughout the Gilded Age was shown by this ambidextrous accomplishment. 29. The diplomat who was not likely. On July 4th, 1826, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, who had been one of the most acrimonious adversaries in history, passed away simultaneously. The Declaration of Independence, which they had both contributed to the creation of, was celebrating its 50-year anniversary. The question, "Is it the 4th?" was Jefferson's last spoken words. He was ignorant that his buddy had passed only a few hours before. Thus, Adams's response was, "Thomas Jefferson still survives." This is the first guest to visit the final frontier. While he was attending the University of Michigan for his undergraduate education, Gerald R. Ford was employed as a male model. He was the first future president to have a professional modeling career, since he was featured on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine in 1940 and even appeared in Look magazine. He was also the only person to have received this honor. You now get the whole picture. There have been eccentrics, philosophers, animal lovers, and men who were, above all else, fascinatingly and unmistakably human, who have called the White House their home. Behind the somber portraits and important choices, the White House has been home to these individuals. A strong dread of vegetables, swearing parrots, and midnight steaks are all examples of things that may be found throughout history. History is not simply about dates and rules.